They say confidence is sexy. I say that's something tall people made up to keep short guys humble. I'm 5'5", 5'6" if I'm lying and wearing cowboy boots. And when I met Rachel, I figured I had a better chance of getting struck by lightning than of landing her. Not because she was just beautiful, though she was in that effortless redhead walking out of a fire kind of way, but because women like her don't usually look twice at guys who need a stepladder to kiss them on the forehead. But Rachel did. More than look twice. She stared, flirted, sat next to me during ethics of technology like I was the only person on the planet with a functioning brain. And for a while I thought it was a prank, like some sorority bet I was going to overhear through a cracked dorm door. Make the Hobbit fall in love with you. But it wasn't. She chased me, Nathan Ford. I had the face of a guy who works in IT and the swagger of a tax accountant. But she liked that. Said I made her laugh, said I listened. And when she told me she didn't believe in sex before marriage, I didn't even blink. I wasn't in it for that. I was already imagining a future. Marriage, kids, a house with a yard, and maybe a dog that didn't hate me for being the same height. We got married the summer after graduation. I gave up a decent shot at climbing the ladder at a tech firm in Austin and moved to Houston to help my dad with the family BBQ chain, Smoky Hills. It's the kind of place where every location smells like brisket and broken dreams. I handled the finances and logistics while Dad handled the meat. And it was good for a while. We bought a house on Lake Conroe, nothing too flashy, but enough to make the neighbors suspicious. 2 matching BMWs, 1 white, 1 black. Like yin and yang, except both payments were too high and the back seats were filled with crushed juice boxes and half-eaten goldfish crackers. Our boys, Tyler and Max, were chaos wrapped in sticky fingers. Rachel was distant. But I figured that's just marriage. I buried myself in work. Then eventually, I buried myself in something else entirely. Writing. I always had stories in my head. When other kids were dreaming about being astronauts, I was dreaming about dialogue, plot twists, that satisfying moment when a hero walks away from an explosion without looking back. So I started writing at night, first on napkins, then in Google Docs. Then I bought a typewriter off Craigslist, because I thought it made me look more like a writer and less like a guy having a midlife crisis before 40. Rachel didn't get it. She said I was wasting time, said if I put half as much energy into Smoky Hills as I did into my little stories, we'd have 5 restaurants instead of 3. And maybe she was right. The business took a hit when I started caring more about fictional people than payroll. The money thinned out. So did her patience. One night, she stood in the kitchen with a glass of Pinot and said, "You're chasing a dream that's not gonna happen. Grow up, Nathan. You're not Hemingway. You're barely even a Ford." That stung. Not because she compared me to a literary legend. I don't drink enough to pull that off, but because she said it in front of Tyler, who then spent the next 3 days asking if Daddy was barely a car. Still, I kept writing. 6 months later, I was sitting in my office/laundry room when the email came through. It was from Brickhouse Publishing, a real New York-based, not a scam publisher. They wanted my books, 3 of them, 30 grand, each. $90,000 for stories I wrote between folding socks and burning brisket. I stared at that email like it was a hallucination. I even called their number to make sure it wasn't a prank. But it was real. I decided to tell Rachel. The big news at Copper Grove, her favorite restaurant. The kind of place with cloth napkins and live peacocks walking around like they own the joint. I even made a reservation under Mr. Ford because I wanted to sound fancy. She was late. Looked amazing, though. Wore that red dress that made waiters forget their jobs, but the second she sat down I could tell something was off. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She barely touched the milkshake she usually raved about. Halfway through appetizers, she got a call. "Not now, Mike," she whispered into her phone, turning her shoulder away from me. "Just like we rehearsed, okay? I love you too." I froze. Not because I heard it, though I did, but because I recorded it. See, I use a little handheld recorder to practice character dialogue. I'd had it running in my coat pocket, mostly out of habit. I didn't even know it was on until I replayed the dinner later. The rest of the night was a blur. I didn't tell her what I heard. Not yet. She acted irritated the whole time, like me chewing my steak was a personal attack. When we got home, I listened to that clip over and over again, just like we rehearsed. What the hell had they rehearsed? And who the hell was Mike? Spoiler: Mike was a pediatrician from our church, the kind of guy who said grace with his eyes closed and probably had a bumper sticker that said, "Jesus is my co-pilot." Also 6'2", of course. It didn't take long for the mask to come off. A few days later, she exploded, said I was a loser, that I'd never be enough, that I was too small to be a real man. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip a table. But I didn't. I just said, "You're still the mother of my kids, but you're not my wife anymore." And I walked out, right past the kids' toy room, past the wall of wedding photos, out into the garage with the 2 BMWs, hers spotless, mine full of fast food wrappers, and drove to the only place I knew I could think straight: Smoky Hills. The manager on duty, an old friend from high school named Ronnie, took one look at me and said, "You look like you just got hit by a brisket truck." I told him everything. He nodded slowly, chewed on a toothpick like it was a moral decision, and said, "You need Claire Whitmore." Who? He pointed behind me. Sitting 2 booths over, in a navy blazer and heels that looked like they came with their own NDA, was a woman with courtroom eyes and a steak knife held like it was part of her cross-examination. "The divorce lawyer," Ronnie said. "She doesn't lose." I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of something new, something sharp, clean, almost surgical. And trust me, Rachel had no idea what was coming. The thing about hiring Claire Whitmore is you don't just file for divorce. You declare psychological war with a smile, perfect posture, and an espresso in hand. I met her the next morning at her office, which looked like the set of a legal drama that got canceled too early. Minimalist decor, glass walls, a single bonsai tree that probably cost more than my car's transmission. She didn't shake my hand. She said, "Tell me the story. Don't skip the ugly parts." I gave her everything. The peacocks, the recorder, the too small to be a real man insult. She didn't flinch once, just scribbled notes like she was already preparing the closing argument. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "Okay, first thing, change the locks. Today, second, we secure the business accounts. Third, we get the kids out of reach." Out of reach? Rachel's desperate. Desperate people do stupid things, especially when they've already rehearsed lies with Dr. Mike McHomewrecker. By 5 p.m. that day, my kids were with my sister, Michelle, neonatologist, single, and built like a linebacker for Christ. Rachel would need a team of Navy SEALs to pry the boys from her guest room. Claire filed the emergency divorce petition by 8 a.m. the next morning. She made sure the judge knew Rachel had a romantic and premeditated affair with a member of our community. Her words, not mine. I would have gone with church snake with a stethoscope, but she said judges don't like poetry. Now, to be clear, I didn't want to destroy Rachel. I just wanted my kids safe, my sanity intact, and maybe, just maybe, for her to realize she'd underestimated the short guy with a typewriter. She, on the other hand, wanted a performance. When she got served the papers, she went full Lifetime movie, screamed in the driveway, accused me of planting spyware, told the neighbors I was unstable. One even brought over banana bread like I was recovering from a brain tumor. But here's the twist. Rachel and Mike thought I'd fall apart, that I'd beg, that I'd turn into a teary mess holding a family photo. Instead, I got sharper, quieter, smarter. Because while she was running her mouth, I was building a case. Claire coached me through every text, every phone call, every moment of restraint. "No yelling," she said. "Let her be the wildfire. You be the fireproof wall." I followed the script. Even when Rachel showed up at Smoky Hills in a tight blouse pretending she wanted to talk like adults, I just smiled, handed her a pulled pork sandwich, and said, "Be careful. It's hot. Just like your lies." Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Like Christmas morning with bacon. Meanwhile, Dr. Mike was starting to sweat. Turns out Brickhouse Publishing's PR team loved the drama. My upcoming book, The Darkest Syringe, was a medical thriller about a charming pediatrician in Austin with a double life. Totally fictional, of course, but the back cover quote? "Sometimes the man with the syringe is sicker than the child." Claire warned me, You can't say it's about him. I didn't. You wrote his dog's name in Chapter 6. Coincidence. And his license plate. Easter egg. Rachel's lawyer was a guy named Lewis, whose only strategy was to bark louder than Claire. Didn't work. She gutted him in mediation like a fish wearing a cheap suit. Every time he objected, she'd smile and say, "Sustained by silence," which I still don't understand legally but somehow worked. Final ruling. I got full physical custody of Tyler and Max. Rachel could visit once a week, but only under my terms, and those terms were strict. No Mike, no unsupervised time, no discussions about the divorce. Rachel looked like she'd swallowed. A live pigeon. She said I was cruel, that I'd turned the boys against her. No, I told her. You just finally met a man who doesn't fall apart when you raise your voice. And I meant it. Funny thing is, for all her dramatics, Rachel never saw the long game. She thought the divorce was the war. It wasn't. It was the prologue, because while she sulked in her apartment and tried to play the victim card, I was boarding a plane with 2 passports, 2 backpacks, and 2 very confused kids headed for Dublin, Ireland. Are we on vacation? Tyler asked. I smiled. Something like that. We spent a year in Ireland, then 2 in Edinburgh, Scotland. I wrote 3 more novels, each one darker than the last. Each one with a thinly veiled version of Mike. A surgeon with a gambling problem, a med school professor with a fake identity, a wellness guru running a black market for children's vitamins. Every time one dropped, his career took a hit. His dull. Patients read between the lines. People talk. People gossip. Especially when your ex-husband is on a podcast called Typewriter Revenge with 1 million subscribers and a theme song that slaps. Mike went from private practice to a consulting job at a government health office. Which brings us to my current book in progress, The Public Illness. He'll never catch a break again. Not because I'm obsessed, but because I believe in literary justice. Back in the States, Rachel tried everything to track us down, sent emails, messages through mutual friends. Once even sent a handwritten letter with a drawing Tyler made 3 years earlier. She said, "They need their mother." I didn't reply, but I did keep the drawing. Now here's the kicker. Life didn't stop just because Rachel blew hers up. Claire, my pit bull in heels, became more than my attorney. Somewhere between custody battles and chapter edits, she became everything. We got married in a quiet ceremony in Scotland. She wore red. I wore a suit that made me look taller. We had a baby girl we named Ivy. She already has Claire's eyes and my stubbornness. Poor thing. We recently moved back to the U.S. New state, new house, new last name for legal reasons. And then, one rainy Tuesday, my phone buzzed. It was Rachel. "Crying? Please," she said. "Let me see them. I'm not that person anymore." I told her my conditions. Electronic monitoring. No lies, no games, no talking about me like I vanished. And if she broke even one rule, I'd disappear again, I said. This time for good. She agreed. Thanked Claire, of all people, for being the woman Nathan needed when I wasn't. And here's the weird part. She meant it. She works as a preschool teacher now, lives alone, doesn't date, sends birthday cards with glitter and too many stickers. Tyler and Max visit her twice a month. They love her, but they also know who she was. Kids are brutally honest. They've said things to her that made me wince, but she listens, apologizes, tries, and deep down, I think she still loves me, which is awkward because I'm madly in love with a woman who once made a judge cry in court and then smiled like it. Was just another Tuesday. Claire is terrifying and perfect, and every time she walks into a room, I stand up just a little taller, even if it's just in socks. The first time someone called me petty, I smiled and said, "Thank you." Petty is for amateurs. What I do? It's performance art, precision-engineered emotional warfare, wrapped in fiction. After The Public Illness dropped, I knew Mike would never work comfortably again. The book wasn't just a hit. It was a cultural event. Book clubs dissected it. Reviewers praised its searing realism. One called it the literary equivalent of watching someone carve a revenge plan into granite, slowly and with love. It sold 300,000 copies in 2 months. Mike's HR department started asking questions. Patients stopped booking appointments. One mother wrote a scathing Yelp review with the title, "If you've read Nathan Ford's book, you already know." Brutal. I didn't respond publicly, never confirmed the inspiration. I just sipped whiskey during interviews and said, writers write what they know. Meanwhile, life with Claire was terrifyingly smooth. We were that rare couple where both people had been sharpened by life, and instead of cutting each other, we carved out something real. She once said, "I liked you the moment you didn't flinch when I cross-examined a barista for giving me almond milk instead of oat. We built a new life, house with a library, backyard with a fire pit. Ivy learned to walk chasing squirrels. The boys adjusted to being in one place again. Even got used to me making grilled cheese sandwiches in the shape of tiny Texas maps. Then came the unexpected twist, Rachel. One morning she showed up at our gate. She looked different, smaller. Not physically, just in presence. No makeup, no drama. Just a woman who'd been burned and realized she'd lit the match herself. "I don't want to fight anymore," she said. "I just want to be a mom." I believed her. Or maybe I believed that people break differently, and sometimes they put the pieces back in a better order. I laid out my terms. Supervised visits only. No mention of the past. No manipulation, no guilt tripping. GPS tracking on her phone during visits. Any violation and I pull the plug. She didn't argue, just nodded and said, "Thank you for not turning them against me." I didn't have to. Kids, remember. One day Max told her, "You're nicer now. You used to yell a lot and say Daddy was broken." She didn't cry. She just hugged him tighter. Now we see her a few weekends a month. She's not the villain anymore. Just human. Maybe that's worse for her. In a story, villains are grand. In life, they're just flawed people trying to clean up a mess they made barefoot. She still loves me, that much is obvious. But I'm not the same Nathan she married. I'm not the guy hoping to be enough. I'm the guy who knows what he brings to the table and who built the damn table himself. Claire, on the other hand, is everything I never knew I needed. She's fire in a courtroom and calm in a storm. She reads my drafts and gives notes like, "Kill this character faster. It's dragging." I dedicated my latest novel to her. The inscription reads, "For Claire, who taught me that justice isn't blind, it just wears heels and doesn't blink." It made her laugh. Then she made a framed print of it and hung it in her office. The book? Another bestseller? This one about a woman who dismantles a corrupt family dynasty using nothing but prenups and charm. Total fiction. Obviously. These days my life is simpler. I write, I grill, I coach Tyler's baseball team even though I still can't throw overhand, without looking like I'm being attacked by bees. The other dads love me. Probably because I once told off an umpire using Shakespeare quotes. But every now and then, I get an email. Usually from some guy. Usually short. Usually heartbroken. They say, "Your book helped me realize I don't have to be tall to stand up for myself." I save every one of them. Because here's the truth. You don't have to be tall to be powerful. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't need revenge to move on. But damn, if it comes wrapped in royalties and 5-star reviews, it doesn't hurt. And if Rachel ever asks me one more time, was it all worth it? I'll say, every single word.